The alien commander's mandibles clicked in amusement as the human fleet opened fire. On the view screen, their primitive railguns fired streaks of glowing projectiles that briefly lit up the darkness before fading into the void, never coming close to the massive warship drifting in orbit. The commander swiveled one of his eye stalks toward the tactical officer, who was struggling to suppress his own laughter. "Do they truly believe they can hit us at this range?" the commander asked, his voice a deep, resonating hum. "Their targeting systems are decades behind ours." The officer's mandibles spread in what could only be described as a grin. "It seems their bravado outstrips their accuracy. Shall we return fire?" "Not yet," the commander said, waving a clawed hand dismissively. "Let them waste their ammunition. Perhaps they'll exhaust themselves." Back aboard the human vessel, Captain Reyes stood straight and still, her hands clasped behind her back. The barrage unfolded on the main screen, but her calm gaze betrayed no hint of concern. Around her, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their hands gliding over controls, their eyes scanning data readouts. "Are we within operational parameters?" Reyes asked. "Yes, ma'am," her tactical officer replied. "Their scans still show no signs of our secondary payload." Reyes nodded. "Good. Maintain the pattern. Let them think we're taking wild potshots." The alien commander leaned back in his chair, his mandibles clicking softly in growing amusement. The humans' barrage wasn't even coming close. It was as if they were trying to hit a distant star. His eye stalks flicked toward a sensor readout, confirming once again that their shields remained at full capacity, untouched and undisturbed. "Commander," the tactical officer said, his voice betraying a hint of confusion. "I'm detecting something odd." "Odd?" The commander straightened slightly. "Define odd," the commander said, his tone sharp and curious. The tactical officer's claws danced across his console. "Their projectiles aren't hitting our shields as you've noted. But I'm picking up faint energy fluctuations, subspace disturbances, along their trajectories. It's almost as if they're not aiming for us," the commander finished, his mandibles clicking shut. A strange silence fell over the bridge as the realization began to sink in. The humans weren't missing out of ineptitude. They were missing on purpose, an unsettling realization that sent a ripple of unease through the alien crew. "Bring up a full trajectory analysis," the commander ordered. His tone had lost its earlier humor, replaced by a cold, calculating edge. "I want to know where every single one of those projectiles is going." Back on the human ship, Reyes allowed herself a small, fleeting smile. "Payload ready?" "Locked and primed, Captain," the tactical officer confirmed. Reyes's eyes lingered on the view screen for a moment, then she spoke with quiet determination. "Execute Phase 2. The alien commander's eye stalks twitched erratically as the data came in. The human projectiles weren't aimed at his warship. They were aimed at something behind it, several kilometers deeper into the gravity well of the system's primary star. He felt a chill creep through his exoskeleton as he realized the humans had not been targeting him at all. "Commander, the projectiles, they're converging on a single point," the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with alarm. "A subspace rift is forming." "Evade," the commander barked, but it was already too late. The humans' so-called wild shots had never been meant to strike the alien vessel. Instead, they had been precisely calculated to destabilize the local subspace field. As the alien ship's powerful shields interacted with the fluctuating subspace rift, it created a cascade effect, tearing open a spatial anomaly that engulfed the warship in a blinding flare of light. On the human bridge, Reyes's expression remained steady as the view screen went white and faded to static. She turned to her crew, her voice calm yet firm as she gave her next orders. When it cleared, the massive alien warship was gone, replaced by a swirling luminescent distortion. "Target neutralized," the tactical officer reported. Reyes allowed herself a small nod. "Well done. Prepare to move on to the next phase." As the human ship repositioned itself, its crew worked with the same quiet determination. There was no cheering, no celebration. Each member of the crew knew that this was just the beginning. They were not here to trade blows with the enemy fleet. They were here to outthink them, to exploit the overconfidence that had left the aliens vulnerable. The alien commander, wherever he might be now, had understood only in those final moments what humanity's true target had been. By then it was far too late. Reyes and her crew had never intended to fight on the aliens' terms. Instead, they had rewritten the rules, turning the alien fleet's superiority into a liability. And now, with the first phase complete, they were ready to reveal their next move. The moment the alien warship vanished into the swirling distortion, the bridge of the human vessel burst into a flurry of motion. Captain Reyes remained at her station, her hands loosely clasped behind her back as she watched the screen, her mind calculating the next move. She was a steadying presence, a calm anchor amid the bridge's controlled chaos. Around her, the crew's hands moved across consoles, their quiet chatter blending with the hum of machinery. The absence of cheers wasn't due to a lack of satisfaction. It was because the mission was far from over. "Bring us about," Reyes commanded. "Maintain a minimum safe distance from the anomaly. Tactical, give me a full readout. I want to know if the rift is expanding." "Yes, ma'am," the tactical officer responded, his fingers gliding over the controls. A holographic display materialized, showing the shifting currents of subspace around the rift. The distortion ebbed and pulsed, but it remained contained for now. The alien ship's shields had exacerbated the reaction, amplifying the rupture and ensuring that anything within its grasp was shredded apart. Reyes gave a brief nod of acknowledgement, her focus never wavering from the display. "Good. Keep monitoring it. I want to know the moment that changes." The science officer, a wiry man named Clark, leaned forward, his brow furrowed as he scrutinized the data on his console. "Captain, I've detected additional energy signatures. Smaller vessels approaching from the far side of the system. Likely scouts. Numbers?" "3, maybe 4, Clark replied. "They're still at extreme range, but they'll pick us up soon if we don't mask our signature." Reyes considered the options. "Comms, initiate low-level signal jamming. Don't let them get a clean scan. Navigation, plot a course that keeps us behind the system's debris field. I want as much interference as possible." "Aye, Captain," came the chorus of responses. The crew moved with clockwork precision, a testament to their training and experience. They knew the stakes. They knew that their actions now could mean the difference between success and failure. Reyes had always trusted her crew, and she had never been let down. As the ship adjusted its trajectory, Reyes turned to her first officer. "Thoughts?" First Officer Jameson, tall and broad-shouldered, stood with her usual calm, measured demeanor, though her narrowed eyes hinted at her concern. She glanced at the tactical readouts before speaking. "I think we're going to have company whether we like it or not. If those scouts get close enough to detect the rift's energy signature, they'll figure out what happened to their command ship." Reyes nodded. "Agreed. But we can't risk direct engagement." "Not yet." Jameson raised an eyebrow. "You're still banking on the next phase working." "I am," Reyes said. "And if it doesn't, we'll adapt. But for now we stick to the plan." Jameson didn't press further. She trusted Reyes's judgment, even when the stakes were this high. It was why she had followed Reyes from one end of the galaxy to the other, through skirmishes and standoffs, always emerging on the other side with a stronger bond of trust. The ship's engines thrummed steadily as it glided past ancient wreckage, the scattered debris casting faint, shifting shadows on the observation window. Fragments of ancient battleships, long-abandoned stations, and derelict freighters drifted in a chaotic orbit, forming a natural screen against detection. The human ship moved through the field with practiced ease, using the wreckage as cover. The tactical officer's voice cut through the stillness. "Captain, the scouts are closing in. 2 of them are shifting course. Looks like they're trying to flank us." "Hold position," Reyes ordered. "Let's see how close they're willing to get." The bridge crew moved with the precision of a well-rehearsed symphony, each step purposeful and each glance deliberate, forming a quiet but relentless rhythm. Every console was a window into the unfolding situation. Energy signatures appeared and shifted on the holographic displays, markers representing the alien scouts inching closer. "Captain," Clark said, "one of the scouts just dropped to sublight speed. It's moving through the debris field." Reyes watched the display intently. "Tactical, prepare a sensor pulse. Low power. I want a clearer picture of their position." "Aye, ma'am." The pulse swept out from the human ship, returning a sharper image of the scout's trajectory. The alien vessel was weaving cautiously through the wreckage, its movements slow and deliberate. It was searching. "Clever," Reyes murmured. "They don't want to charge in blind." "Do we engage?" Jameson asked. "Not yet," Reyes replied. "We wait. Let them get closer." The seconds ticked by. The alien scout continued its careful approach, its scans probing the debris field. The other scouts maintained a wider orbit, clearly waiting for their lead ship to confirm a target. Finally, the tactical officer's voice broke the tension. "Captain, the lead scout is within optimal range." Reyes's eyes narrowed. "Target their sensor array. One precise shot. No debris collateral." "Aye, Captain." The ship's weapons officer made a minor adjustment, aligning the railgun's targeting systems. A single burst of energy discharged, and on the holographic display, the scout's sensor signature flickered and went dark. Target disabled, the tactical officer reported. Reyes gave a small, deliberate nod. Hold fire. I want to see how they react first. The remaining scouts hesitated. Without a lead ship to guide them, they seemed unsure of how to proceed. For a few tense moments they maintained their distance, their movements cautious and erratic. Captain, Jameson said, if they realize their lead scout was hit without any visible source they might back off. But if they think it was debris they might press forward. Reyes considered the possibilities. Comms, send a low-frequency burst toward the remaining scouts. Make it look like a debris collision warning. Tactical, start cycling fake sensor readings through the field. Let's confuse their scans. As the crew carried out her orders, Reyes stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the displays. The alien scouts were moving erratically now, their scans distorted by the debris field and the false signals. It was a game of cat and mouse, and Reyes intended to keep them chasing shadows. Captain, Clark said, the rift's energy readings are stabilizing. It's no longer expanding. Good, Reyes replied. Keep monitoring. The last thing we need is that thing destabilizing further. The bridge fell into a tense rhythm. Every move was deliberate, every order precise. The human crew had practiced for this kind of mission countless times, and their coordination showed. They were outnumbered and potentially outgunned, but they had the advantage of preparation and ingenuity. After what felt like hours, the tactical officer finally spoke up. Captain, the scouts are pulling back. They've re-engaged their long-range sensors. Looks like they're retreating to a safer distance. Reyes allowed herself a brief sigh of relief. Maintain our position. I don't want to give them any reason to come back. The crew settled back into their stations, the immediate threat averted for now. But Reyes knew this was just a temporary reprieve. The alien fleet wouldn't stay disorganized forever. They would regroup, analyze the data, and come back stronger. No room for error. Jameson, Reyes said, her tone firm, begin preparations for Phase 3. We need to stay one step ahead. Aye, Captain, Jameson replied. As the ship continued its silent patrol, Reyes glanced at the swirling distortion on the view screen. The alien warship's absence was a stark reminder of what they were capable of, but it was also a warning. Their ingenuity and planning had worked this time, but the stakes were only going to get higher. And as the next phase loomed, Reyes knew there was end. Captain Reyes stood still, her hands clasped behind her back, her eyes fixed on the swirling distortion on the view screen. The weight of the situation showed only in the slight tightening of her jaw. Around her, the bridge crew moved with quiet efficiency, preparing for the next phase. Though the alien scouts had retreated for now, she knew it wouldn't be long before they returned, likely in greater numbers and with more advanced strategies. Tactical, she said, her voice steady. What's our current weapon status? We've restocked all forward batteries, the tactical officer replied. Pulse cannons are primed, and the subspace destabilizer is fully recharged. We're ready for another engagement if it comes to that. Understood, Reyes replied. She glanced at the navigation console. Helm, how far are we from the designated waypoint? 3 minutes, Captain, the helmsman said. Current speed and trajectory are holding steady. Reyes acknowledged with a measured nod, her eyes never leaving the view screen. Good. Let's keep it that way. I want to reach the waypoint before they have a chance to reorganize. The bridge settled into a tense rhythm, the hum of the ship's engines blending with the occasional blips from the sensor displays. Reyes folded her arms, her eyes fixed on the distortion that had swallowed the alien warship. It was a reminder of the delicate balance they were walking. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and they could find themselves on the wrong side of that rift. Captain Clark, the science officer, spoke up. We're still detecting residual subspace fluctuations in the anomaly. It's stabilizing, but the energy signature is unusual. It's not dissipating as quickly as we'd expect. Reyes turned to him. Explain, she said, her voice edged with curiosity. Clark hesitated, his fingers hovering above the console. He glanced at the readings again as if trying to find a flaw in the data. Typically, after a rupture like this, we'd see the subspace energy levels drop off within a few minutes. But this rift, it's holding steady. It's almost as if it's maintaining itself. Could it pose a threat? Reyes asked. It's hard to say, Clark admitted. But if it remains active, it could draw attention, both from their reinforcements and from anyone else in the vicinity. Reyes considered this. Keep monitoring it. If you detect any signs of expansion or instability, I want to know immediately. Clark nodded. Yes, Captain. The tension on the bridge thickened as the ship drew closer to the waypoint. The alien scouts had not reappeared, but Reyes knew better than to assume they had given up. They were likely regrouping, analyzing the data from the engagement and planning their next move. Captain, Jameson said quietly, do you really think we can keep playing this game of cat and mouse forever? Reyes kept her tone steady, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of contemplation. No. But we're not trying to. Every move we make is calculated to buy time. Time to reach the waypoint, time to secure our objective. And if they catch up before we get there? Jameson pressed. Reyes finally turned to her, her gaze firm. Then we deal with it. We've faced worse odds before. We'll find a way to adapt. Jameson held her captain's gaze for a moment before nodding. She didn't press further. The helmsman's voice broke through the tension. Captain, we're approaching the waypoint. 2 minutes out. Reyes straightened. Tactical, begin pre-targeting. Science, keep an eye on that rift. I don't want any surprises. The crew snapped into action, their movements sharp and coordinated. Reyes knew that every second counted. The longer they remained here, the more time the enemy had to track them down. Captain, Clark said, his tone more urgent now. I'm detecting a spike in the rift's energy levels. Reyes immediately turned to him. What kind of spike? Clark's hands flew over his console. It's fluctuating rapidly. It might be, he broke off, his face pale. Captain, something's coming through. A chill ran through the bridge. Reyes's mind raced. If something was emerging from the rift, it could be another alien warship, or worse. Tactical, she said sharply. All weapons on standby. Helm, maintain course. Science, give me a visual. The main view screen flickered as the sensors locked onto the rift. For a moment, nothing but swirling energy filled the display. Then, slowly, a shape began to form, a large, shadowy mass that seemed to defy clear definition. It wasn't another alien warship. It was something else entirely. Is that a ship? Jameson asked, her voice low. Clark shook his head, his brow furrowing. It's not reading as any vessel we've seen before. It's more like a structure, a subspace anomaly manifesting as something tangible. Reyes frowned. What's it doing? It's just sitting there, Clark said. But it's emitting a massive energy field. If it expands? We can't let that happen, Reyes said. Tactical, target the anomaly. Prepare to fire on my mark. The crew moved quickly, aligning the ship's weapons with the anomaly. Reyes watched the screen intently, her jaw set. The construct wasn't moving, but its presence was unnerving. She had seen many strange phenomena in her career, but this was something new. Captain, Clark said, his voice tight. Energy levels are climbing again. If it destabilizes, fire, Reyes ordered. A burst of energy shot from the human ship's forward batteries, striking the anomaly dead center. The construct shuddered, its edges rippling as if made of liquid light. Another pulse followed, and another. The distortion around it began to collapse, the swirling energy funneling inward. It's working, Clark said, relief in his voice. The anomaly's destabilizing. Reyes's tone sharpened. Keep firing. Make sure it's obliterated. The bridge crew remained focused as the ship's weapons continued their assault. The anomaly's shape twisted and shrank, the light within it dimming. Finally, with one last pulse, it imploded, leaving nothing but empty space where it had been. Target neutralized, the tactical officer reported. Reyes exhaled slowly. Good. Helm, take us to the waypoint. Let's finish this. The crew carried out her orders, the tension on the bridge easing slightly. But Reyes knew better than to relax completely. They were still in hostile territory, and the alien fleet wasn't likely to stay disorganized for long. As the ship approached the waypoint, Reyes allowed herself a brief moment of reflection. They had survived another encounter, and the mission was still on track. But the challenges were only going to get harder. She knew her crew would face them head-on, just as they always had. The view screen displayed the waypoint, a distant, barren moon orbiting a gas giant. It wasn't much to look at, but it represented a crucial step in their plan. Reyes's voice was steady as she gave her next order. Begin Phase 3. As the crew initiated Phase 3, Captain Reyes shifted her stance, her gaze firmly set on the barren moon displayed on the view screen. The dusty surface rotated slowly against the backdrop of the gas giant, a quiet reminder of how far they'd come, and how far they still had to go. Behind her, the bridge buzzed with activity as each station worked to ensure the final phase went off without a hitch. Tactical, she said, her voice cutting through the low hum of the ship's systems. Status on the target zone? Preliminary scans show no significant defenses, the tactical officer replied. There's light debris from an older skirmish, but nothing we can't navigate. Atmospheric density is low but manageable. Any signs of reinforcements? Reyes pressed. None yet, Captain, came the swift response. But if the alien fleet regrouped after our last engagement, it's only a matter of time before they send more ships this way. Reyes nodded, her mind already working through contingencies. She turned to her first officer. Jameson, are the ground teams prepped and ready? They're on standby, Captain, Jameson confirmed. We can deploy on your order. Reyes allowed herself a moment's pause. She tightened her grip on the chair's armrest, her gaze lingering on the dusty moon's surface as if searching for answers in its shadows. For years the conflict had raged, spilling across systems and worlds. Each engagement was a step closer to an end they could barely envision. This mission wasn't just about survival, it was about sending a message. The aliens had underestimated humanity before. This time they wouldn't have the chance. Deploy the ground teams, Reyes ordered. Let's finish what we started. The command echoed through the bridge, and within moments, shuttles began launching from the ship's hangars. On the surface, the squads moved with calculated precision, their armored boots kicking up clouds of dust as they secured the landing zones. The moon's silence was broken by the soft whirring of human machinery and the sharp, intermittent crackle of radio chatter, lending an eerie rhythm to the desolate landscape. Reyes monitored the operation from the bridge, her expression steady. The tactical display lit up with markers as the teams advanced toward the target. She could hear the comm chatter, brief updates, confirmation of positions, and the occasional terse acknowledgement of an obstacle overcome. Everything was proceeding as planned. But then Clark's voice came through the noise, carrying a note of unease. Captain, I'm picking up a faint subspace fluctuation near the moon's surface. It's been steady so far, but it's not going away. Source? Reyes asked sharply. I'm not sure, Clark admitted. It's localized near one of the landing zones. Could be residual energy from the anomaly, or it could be something new. Reyes's gaze narrowed. Jameson, have the ground teams encountered any unusual activity? Jameson shook her head. Nothing reported so far, Captain. But I'll have them run additional scans. Do that, Reyes said. I don't want any surprises. The bridge grew still, save for the quiet beeps of instruments and the occasional low murmur between crew members as they fine-tuned their readings. The tactical display updated in real time, showing the ground teams moving closer to their objective. The fluctuating energy signature remained steady, a faint but insistent presence that gnawed at Reyes's thoughts. Captain, Clark said again. It's changing. The frequency is increasing, and I'm seeing minor distortions in the local gravity field. Could it be a trap? Jameson asked. Possibly, Reyes replied. But we don't pull back now. We've come too far. She stepped closer to the display, studying the data as it scrolled across the screen. Whatever this fluctuation was, it wasn't behaving like a natural phenomenon. Reyes knew that in situations like these, the unknown could be as deadly as a fleet of enemy ships. Tactical, she said. Increase the shield coverage around our forward teams. I want them protected if this turns into something more than a fluctuation. Yes, Captain, the tactical officer replied. The minutes stretched on as the ground teams reached their target zone. The markers on the tactical display indicated that the objective, a critical alien communication relay, was within their grasp. Reyes's heart pounded once, hard, before she forced herself back into her calm exterior. Ground teams have visual on the relay, Jameson reported. No hostiles in sight, but that energy fluctuation is growing stronger. Reyes took a slow breath. Give the order. Secure the relay. Quickly. As Jameson relayed the command, Reyes watched the screen intently. The ground teams moved with precision, deploying sensor arrays and setting up perimeter defenses. But the fluctuation didn't subside. If anything, it grew more erratic. Captain, I'm seeing spikes in the frequency, Clark said urgently. It's destabilizing. If it continues? A sudden burst of light on the tactical display cut him off. The markers representing the ground teams shifted as the comms crackled with static. Reyes's pulse quickened. Report, she snapped. Ground teams are still operational, Jameson said, her voice strained. But we're getting interference. Something's disrupting their equipment. Is it the relay? Reyes asked. No, Clark replied. It's coming from beneath the surface. Whatever's causing that fluctuation, it's not just subspace energy. It's an active source. Reyes's mind raced. Isolate the source. Find out what it is and neutralize it. We can't let it compromise the mission. The bridge crew moved swiftly, their hands flying over controls as they worked to pinpoint the anomaly's origin. On the surface, the ground teams adjusted their equipment, scanning deeper into the moon's crust. The interference crackled and shifted, but the teams held their ground. "Captain," Clark said, "I think we've got it. There's a subspace emitter buried below the relay. It's tied to a hidden defense system. Can we disable it remotely?" Reyes asked. "Not from here," Clark admitted. "The ground teams will have to do it on site." Reyes nodded, her jaw tightening. "Jameson, have the ground teams deploy demolition charges. Take out that emitter." Jameson relayed the order, and the comms came alive with brief acknowledgments. The tactical display showed the ground teams shifting their positions, moving to neutralize the hidden threat. Clark's voice broke through the tension. "Captain, the emitter's energy output is rising. They need to hurry." "Ground teams," Reyes said into the comms, her voice firm and urgent. "Priority 1. Neutralize that emitter before it hits critical. Move fast." The seconds ticked by, each one feeling longer than the last. Reyes kept her gaze on the tactical display, willing the markers to hold steady. The bridge crew worked in tense silence, the hum of the ship's systems the only sound. Finally, a muted thud came through the comms. The tactical display flickered, then stabilized. "Emitter neutralized," Jameson confirmed. "The interference is clearing." Reyes allowed herself a small nod. "Good work. Have the teams finish securing the relay. Once it's fully operational, begin extraction." As the bridge crew carried out her orders, Reyes stood at the center of the room, her hands still behind her back. The moon's barren surface rotated slowly on the screen, but the mission was now one step closer to completion.